Welcome, everyone. Happy Monday to another edition of Talking March Madness. And what an unforgettable weekend this has been. I'm Miguel Mike Medina. This is Avery Jones. Avery, do you enjoy this weekend?
This weekend was awesome in terms of sports in general, but March Madness, like I said, is living up to its name. We had some great games over the weekend, a couple of surprises as well. So the Sweet 16 has been finalized, and I think it's about to get better.
Yes, indeed. The first one, Wildcat versus Wildcat, Kentucky, Kansas State. What a game. I enjoy watching this game. Kentucky, some of the good things that worked out for them was their second chance points and offensive second chance points. They were outstanding. And it's heartbreaking for Kentucky because they really fought hard in this game, especially Oscar. Oscar, he had a monster performance, 25 points, 18 rebounds, 2 steals. Kansas State, they struggle from downtown, but Marquise Noel, he is a gamer, a true gamer. There were about 3 crazy shots that he made in the second half that they had Kentucky's bench just shaking their head like they're not supposed to be going in, but they went in. But he's an absolute gamer. He brought it. He had 27 points in this game. And Kansas State won 75-69. But I feel like one of the things that hurt Kentucky were their turnovers. This is a team that averaged less than 12 turnovers per game this season, and they had 16 in this game. So that just is not going to cut it. What do you say about this game?
You're right. The Kentucky Wildcat game was very interesting. Kentucky, a storied college basketball school, but Kansas State, you're right. On the boards, they were getting those second chance shots. But you're right. Marquise Knowles for KSU. I mean, a great young man. Some, like you said, some of those shots were Steph Curry-esque, if you will. But you're right. But when your team can just get behind you, it's almost like anything can go in. But on both sides, Kentucky, they just didn't have, a little bit more of what KSU had in order to finish the game. And you're right, KSU started off slow, but like anything, when you're a school that most people may not think you're going to win, that just gives them the momentum. It gives them the mentality to say, we've got this game. We just need to, have everything going for us at that moment and to make it happen. I think the Kentucky Kansas State game, one of the top 5 games so far of the tournament.
It was a great back and forth battle. I love that second half. I mean, aside from Noel, Masood and Johnson made back-to-back threes, which really put the dagger or the exclamation point on this game, which that took place in the last 2.5 minutes of the half. But this was a great victory for KSU. They will now have a meeting against Michigan State for Sweet 16 on Thursday at 6:30 p.m. That's something to look out for. So let's go with the next one, Avery. The Cinderella story for FDU has ended. However, they need to keep their heads up high. It was a magnificent run, and it was against Florida Atlantic. But this was another interesting game. But what's interesting that I found out about FDU is that they are the shortest team in Division I. They averaged 6'3", which is, I found that that was a hilarious stat, but I just had to bring that up. But this is a team that had 32 wins this season. Um, One of the things that really helped Florida Atlantic is that down the stretch they won on that 7-0 run. That really killed FDU's chances of winning this game. And it's funny because that second half always reminded me of Kentucky and Kansas State in terms of how they were going back and forth. So that was interesting because let's be honest, for me, the first half was boring, but then that second half, they both teams picked it up. So, and then you had a boot at the end because of poor sportsmanship. And what was even more hilarious is that he missed the dunk. Usually, I don't get worked up or I don't have no criticism when you have a comfortable lead and then you just want to show off at the end of the game. I usually don't have a problem with that because it's like, okay, you lost, fine. But there was something about this game and that moment that it just made me say, really, really, you didn't do that. But the boot, they let him have it. They let him have it. So, but that's that. But John L. Davis, what can I say about him? He had 29 points for Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic this season, they're 9-1 in games decided by 5 points or less. What do you have to say about this game?
You're right. The glass slipper broke for FDU. It was a great run for them. They kept it close in the game, which I thought was very good. But Florida Atlantic, like I said, I went to school there. They're not far from here, about an hour and a half south of me. Um, they coming into this tournament as a ninth seed, they middle of the bracket. They wanted to show that they can take on any comers and they're going to try. They're not just going to roll over and get manhandled, and lose by 15, 20 points. And you're right, the first half was a bit slow. Aside from maybe a couple games, a lot of these first half, it's like the teams are just, trying to feel each other out, find out what's going on, who's going to get the ball most, who's going to be on the boards, getting those rebounds. But you're right, that ending kind of soured me a bit too. But Florida Atlantic, they deserve it. FDU has nothing to be ashamed of. They came in, they put their school on the map, so I think we may not be hearing the last of FDU, in the upcoming years, if you will. But Florida Atlantic, they took it. Florida Atlantic took it. So now they want to continue the run, and I'm happy here to see it.
The number 5th seed Miami Hurricanes versus number 4 seed Indiana. And before this game even started, there was something about that matchup that I told myself I had to tell Avery that, you know what, let's talk about this one. Like at first I said, let's focus just on 3 games, pick 3 games. But I said, I got to pick a 4th one. And something tells me, like, let me go with the 4th one. And I'm glad I did because Miami, I did not expect them to set the tone so strongly like they did. They started the game on an 8-0 run. They played very good man-to-man defense. I saw some zone defense as well being played on Indiana. But much credit to Indiana, they got back in the game by going on a run that started at the end of the first half, and they continued in the second half, at the beginning of the second half as well. And what happened next? Miami's 3-point shooting just started raining. And Isaiah Wong, he was the catalyst for this Miami Hurricanes team. This was a young man who only scored 5 points against Drake, not the rapper, the school. And for him to drop 27 points in this game to lead Miami to go to Sweet 16, phenomenal. He made 4 out of the six three attempts. He made 4 out of 6. Overall, he finished 9 for 17 from the field. And another thing that was important was the bench. Miami's bench stepped up. Indiana's bench, zero. No one from their bench scored. And we always talk about how much the superstar got to step up, this and that. But in basketball, it doesn't matter if it's the NBA or in college, role players, you need your role players to step up. There's a lot of things you need in order to win. You need at least a superstar, you need to play defense, ball movement, and you need great role players. If you have a weak bench, you're not going to win nothing. So, and that's the thing about Indiana. Um, Trace Jackson Davis, he carries so much load for this team. In this game, he had 23 points, 8 rebounds, 5 blocks, but it wasn't enough. He needed more help from his team, and he didn't get it. So I feel that with a combination of that, Isaiah Wong, and those 3-point shots that Miami hit in the second half, that's the reason why they're moving on to Sweet 16. And they will be playing the number 1 Houston on Friday at 7:15 p.m. So go ahead, Avery.
You're right. I am, well, I don't want to say I'm surprised by the game, but I actually was surprised by the game. My manager at work, he's going to be happy that Indiana is out of the tournament. He is a Purdue fan. Sadly, the team didn't make it through the first round, but he has a little bit of solace knowing that Indiana got knocked out. But you're right. I was a bit worried in them, the Miami Hurricanes playing Drake, the school, because they were down, I think, at least 7 points during that game at one point. But you're right. This time around, playing Indiana, another school that has a storied basketball program, they took it to them. They wanted to prove, not only can their football program be a force, but their basketball program can be as well. And you're right. They had all the elements working for them. They had their superstar making shots. They were playing defense, and their bench. Their bench is the key. Every team, and you're correct, whether it be college, whether it be NBA, your bench has to make an impact when their numbers are called upon. So I see this as a good stepping stone for Miami, having some good momentum. Now, them playing Houston is probably going to be a bigger test, but I see them hanging in there for a little bit. Granted, today's Monday, they play Friday. A lot of things can happen between now and then, but I think they're ready for that test. I think getting to the Sweet 16, especially, like I said, in the madness of this tournament, I think they want to prove that they can be a force for this tournament. So we might want to be on the lookout for them. They're a sleeper school. They're one of probably about 3 sleeper schools that other opponents need to look out for.
Yes, Miami Hurricanes, we know historically they have a great football program, baseball as well. And now basketball, this season they've been giving people quite a surprise. So if they some way, somehow knock off Houston, which they're capable of doing, based on how this March Madness is going this season, they're going to have a lot of people say, Miami Hurricanes, they got something to say. So I'm looking forward to, the Sweet 16 is looking beautiful so far with these matchups remaining, of these last 16 teams remaining. Last but not least, number 6, TCU versus number 3, Gonzaga. Another matchup that excited me. The game lived up to the expectation that I had. So first off, TCU, they played so well in this game, especially the first half. The first half belonged to TCU. Gonzaga, they struggled from downtown in the first half. So what they did is they took advantage of putting points in the paint, and that's why they have Drew Timme there. He's your guy. If you need points and down, he'll give it to you. But Gonzaga, then they went on a 13-0 run, which was halfway in the second half, somewhere in the middle. But I mean, the thing that, and this happened, TCU players mentioned this in the post-game press conference, that rebounding tortured them. Rebounding killed them. Gonzaga completely out-rebounded this team 40-33. And that was one of the biggest reasons why Gonzaga was able to win this game. But again, so much credit to TCU for fighting, for hanging on, for battling against a good team like Gonzaga, who will be going to their 8th straight Sweet 16. But TCU, especially when you talk about Mike Miles Jr., he played outstanding against Gonzaga last night. I give him so much credit for doing everything he could to lift his team to victory, but they just fell short. And I have a good feeling that he's gonna have a bright future. I don't know. There's something about him, especially about this game, that made me say he might have a bright future. So Gonzaga moving on to Sweet 16. Yes, it's a tough loss for TCU because they did lead as many as 10 in this game. But this also goes to show you got to be careful who you mock, who you wake up, because supposedly Drew Timme, he got mocked or dissed through social media. I guess it was from TCU. So that added much more wood into the fire. And that's why he had a big monster game that he had last night. So Drew Timme, obviously, he took it personal because he said, okay, I thought TCU was a very high, intellectual, respectable school. So, all right, if that's as it's going to be, I have something to say about that. And he answered the bell with 28 points and 8 rebounds. Go ahead, Avery.
I agree. That kind of shocked me a bit. I understand, you may want to get under people's skin a bit, but when people take that to heart, that can be fuel for them to just show up and show out. And you're right. Not so long ago, Gonzaga was a Cinderella. But now they are kings of college basketball. So to see them back again, they did have a rough start this season. This matchup was interesting. Hearing TCU, like you said, some of these schools, great football programs that we hear all the time. So now we're in March Madness and we're hearing some of these similar schools, and now we're being treated to not only seeing great football programs, but also great basketball programs. And it's great to see, and Gonzaga just staying in it. One thing in college basketball, no lead is safe. You can have a 15-point lead and it can be gone in 2 minutes and 42 seconds. So Gonzaga going on these mini runs, Gonzaga hitting the boards, getting these rebounds, they were the key to staying in this game and not only pulling away later. So Gonzaga, another Sweet 16. I think of one of my few brackets that still remain active. I think have Gonzaga at least making it to the Final Four. So we'll see how they do. Let's see how this momentum they created playing TCU. Let's see how this continues going into the weekend.
Aside from Drew Timme, you had other guys that stepped up, like Anton Watson. He had 12 rebounds, 3 steals. Malaki Smith, off the bench, he scored 11 points. He went 4 for 6 from the field, 3 for 4 from downtown. So Drew Timme had help from the other guys as well. But Gonzaga, I hope that they win it all because I've been rooting for them for the last few years. Yes, I didn't like what they did to John Stockton, who's an alumni there. But I want Gonzaga to win. If they don't, then let's see someone else win. but we're gonna have ourselves a new champion. No Kansas. North Carolina is not in this tournament. Um, no Baylor. I mean, this March Madness is getting more interesting, and more unpredictable. And I love it. I love unpredictability. So, but yeah, now it's up to Sweet 16.
You're right, Miguel. Like I said, March Madness living up to its name. And you're right. I like that, like we were talking about late last year when it comes to college football. Let's see some new blood. Let's see some teams that are coming out of nowhere. Let's see some teams that, people have said, oh, they're okay, but all of a sudden the tournament comes around and they just, light up the floor. Yes, you're going to have your superstars. Yes, you're going to have, your great moments like we have seen, even with Furman's upset of Virginia, with FDU upsetting Purdue. So let's continue to, support these young men to see what they have for March Madness, because, you know, like the name says, Sweet 16, it can only get sweeter from now, because looking at these matchups coming into the weekend, it's going to be some great basketball. It really is.